So what we're going to do today is take the SQL 2014 Management Pack, its database backup monitor, and we're going to clone it, and then we're going to modify it to do a little bit more advanced monitoring. I've had to do this for some of my large customers where basically out of box, the way the SQL 2014 and any of the SQL management packs work as far as database backup monitoring is it's looking at it in a particular way, and it's somewhat limited. And you have some overrides you can set via the console if you want to say, well, if it's X number of days out of date, generate an alert. But I have customers that want to get a little bit more granular. They want to know how many hours has it been since this database is backed up. So to do this, what we need to do first is go to File, New, and we're going to say Project. We're going to say Operations 2012 R2 Management Pack. I already have a predefined directory there. We'll name this SQL 2014 DB Backup, because that's all we're going to be cloning out of this. So what we'll do first is we'll go over here to References, and we're going to say Add a Reference, and then we'll go Browse, and what we want to do is go up, and I've downloaded the SQL 2014 packs, and in this case what we're concerned with is the 2014 monitoring pack. So we'll click OK. And so what we want to do is now that we have this, we can go and actually look at that code of what's the product group written as far as database backup monitoring. So we can right click and say View XML. And manifest we don't really need to care about right now. What we can do is, rather than have to go and kind of step through every single individual item and collapse it, I usually like to just do a quick Control F and find. And so we know this one should be something like DB Backup, and we have state, so we'll go and do that. So we can see here's the data source module, so this is one portion that we're going to have to copy. We can F3 to the next one. We can see within that there is a Vbscript that is running. Go look, there's a unit monitor type, so we'll need to grab that as well. And we'll search again. So you can see where the unit monitor type references back to that data source that we saw before. There's an underlying unit monitor where it's actually going and generating that alert and linking back up to that unit monitor type. And the alert string display messages. We've got some display string elements, just anything you interact with in the console that's going to have text around it is going to be wrapped in a display string element, so we're going to need to copy those out eventually. And quite a few of those, and there's going to be a knowledge article that's going to give the information on what does this monitor actually do, how does it work, additional guidance of what you can do when you get this type of alert. So those are kind of all the items that we're going to need to copy out. To start out with, we're going to create some folders just to be able to have some structure for our new MP. So we'll make a type definitions folder. Underneath that, we can go and let's create another one just to make things easier. And so what's our first one that we had? We go all the way up to the top. So we had our data source module. So we want this new folder to be data source module type. And spell module correctly. Then from what I recall, the next was that we had a unit monitor type, which would also fall under type definitions. So that's going to be one section. We're going to create another high-level folder. This one's going to be for monitoring. Since we just have a single monitors folder under that for the unit monitor, I don't really care if we create the subfolder structure. The folders that you create is really just for your own organization, so it's not, there's no one rule. We could technically go and just create one big XML file, but I find it can be easier to split things up just to be able to understand what's going on. We're also going to create our own scripts folder for that Vbscript we saw. And we're going to want to have as well some language packs folder. And we're going to want a presentation folder too. So we have our folders. Underneath any of the folders, what we have to do then is start building out our management pack fragments. So we're going to select empty management pack fragment. In this case, it's just going to be a one-to-one match. So this is going to be our data source module type. So we've got a fragment there. Here we can go and create another new item. And we'll do unit monitor type. Under monitoring, we can name this whatever we want. I'm going to name it monitors just because that's the XML heading that would most precede unit monitors. You could name it unit monitors.mpx, it doesn't really matter. We'll give ourselves language packs as well. This is where our display strings and those knowledge articles is going to go, or are going to go. And we'll do a quick presentation one. This one will be really small. It will just be that display string. And there we go. We've got everything we need. And technically as well, if we want to bring in that Vbscript eventually, we can go and create an empty Vbscript. For the moment, I don't remember the exact name, so we'll just leave it as is, and then we can go back and modify. There we go. So now what we want to do is grab each individual part that we had from that original XML. So if we go and say database backup status, so there's that first data source module type. We can go and collapse it and then just click to the left to select all of it. We'll Control C. What we'll do here, just to make life a little easier, is let's go and we'll make a mini window over here. And then we can go and scroll through our other windows up here. And so what we need to do is first just put in any of the XML that needs to encapsulate what we're copying. So this is a type definition. You have the nice IntelliSense, so we can go and select module types. And now it's going to be valid for us to go and paste in that data source module type. And so you can see as well that Vbscript is embedded in here. We're going to leave that alone for now. We will take care of that later, but what I want to do first is just grab absolutely everything that we need, and we can fix that formatting a little bit. There we go. And we'll just Control save, or Control S to save while we're going through. So we can go back down, and so what we need next, DB Backup stat, and there's our unit monitor type, so we'll collapse that, click to the left, copy, and in this case again, this is also a type definition, so we have to encapsulate it as before. It is, however, not a module type, it's a monitor type, and then we can go and paste that in. And that is valid. Collapse that, clean up that space. And again, this is much easier when you have a slightly larger screen. Doing this on a single screen is a little bit harder, but either a very large screen or multi-monitor setup, just divide Visual Studio and it makes life a lot easier. We'll save that as well. Then we're going to go through and go back to here, hit escape so we're not selected just on that one item. We'll Control F again. Stat. And we'll make our way down to our unit monitor. So this is not a type definition, so we're going to start with monitoring. And then underneath here, monitors. And then it's valid for us to put in a unit monitor there. You can see kind of how this is working. It's running once a day. Its threshold is by default. If a database hasn't been backed up in 7 days, that is going to be bad. So that's quite a bit of time for a database not to be backed up. It is overridable, so you could set that all the way down to 1 day. But if you need further granularity where you want to know if you've got a database that should be backing up more frequently than once a day, this is really not going to help you, and there's nothing you can do. You can't give it, it wouldn't accept a value of you saying, well, this is 0.5 day. If you tried to put any type of float or double there, it wouldn't take it. Or would at least not validly compute it. It might take the number fine. And so we're going to go back to here, and then we're going to go down. And so here's our string resource ID. So this is a very small one. This is just going to be our presentation, and string resources. And that's all we need there. So I mean, we could have packed that in somewhere else, but it's just nice to kind of see each of the logical pieces split out. Then we're going to make our way over to our language packs. And so for this, let's go, and there's going to be quite a few of these, so we're going to be going back and forth. So we want that, we want that. So we're going to do these in pieces just because you can see they're kind of spread out. So the first thing we need to do is language packs. Then we need to say language pack ID equals, and in this case we're going to do ENU. Certainly you could localize to your location is default, and spell is default correctly is always good. True, and there we go. That's where we need to start. And then we can start bringing in display strings if we go one more. And we'll do display strings there, and it can't hurt just while we're here. Let's go and add in the formatting for knowledge articles so we don't forget. So we're going to grab these three, or those four, if I could count. Perfect. And now we need to go and see what else there is. So we've gone through that, gone through that, gone through that. And now let's jump down. So we're selected within that, so that's not going to work. There we go. And DB Backup stat is coming with that being end at the moment. So we've already, let's go back through and make sure we got everything that we actually wanted. There's our unit monitor. Here's our first four of these, which we can ignore. And now we have some more. Grab those. Actually grab all of those. And then we have some more. Again, these are just the display strings that are any of the dialogue that we see in the actual console. And so this is just grabbing those to make life easy as possible. And make sure we got all of those. Looks like we missed one there, yeah. And going down to the bottom, and so here's our knowledge article. So we're going to grab that, and I don't think there should be two, there should just be one. Perfect. Grab that, and drop that in there. So now, if we've done this correctly, we should be able to build at this point. Well, actually that's not true. There's one last thing we need to do. If we go and view the XML here, well, let's actually build, because it will tell us what's wrong. So we have one error so far. Don't need to ignore any of the messages, don't need to worry about the warnings, but we do need to worry about it's looking for SQL 2014 core. And if we go back and view the XML here, we can go and see what alias was assigned core. So we need to add the SQL 2014 discovery in order for this to work. And so we can go up, grab that discovery, and by default it's just going to give it a generic alias, so we do need to go and actually set it properly and give it an alias that we want. So see, it's just giving it the MS2D, so we're going to say SQL 2014 core, or alternatively we could adjust everywhere that alias was referenced, but it's much easier just to match it up. Say save in that way, and we will build again and see if there's anything else that we missed. There we are. And so it also doesn't like system health, so we do have the system health library, but if we go and look at properties for that, it is currently just health, so we need to modify that alias. And we'll build. And we have a successful build. So what we've done now is we have completely isolated everything we need at the moment to have a fully working version of the SQL 2014 DB Backup monitor as it currently stands in the product groups implementation. So by doing this, we can now go and change anything we want here, and it pretty much allows us to make our own little custom version, but still getting to use a lot of the product group's really well-written code, rather than going and saying, let's start from square one and write this all ourselves. So we're going to collapse that, we're going to copy, and then there's a tool that I like to use called the transform tool. And what it will do is if we go and paste in our large bit of code, we can then go and say XML on escape. And so any of the places where there's code that we don't like and don't want to have it there, it's going to go and fix it for us and remove any of the XML escapes. So we can go copy that now and go to our Vbscript, paste it in, and other than this script body tag right at the beginning, remove that, and we're all set. And now this is a little bit easier for us to go through and read. You can actually see what are the comments. It's just a little bit nicer. If we want to go and find where is the actual SQL code, let's do a quick search for backup in here. And so all the way down at the bottom, we have a nice little select statement that is being run on our SQL servers, and there's still a little bit of Vbscript formatting. But what we can do is, I've already gone and pre-staged this on a SQL server, so I'll bring over remote desktop, and we'll take a look at SQL Management Studio. And so this is what the out-of-box script is going to do. And so you can see it's going after days since last backup, and it's checking. It's not looking at the temp database, so we don't really care if temp is backed up or not. If we go and comment that out, we can see that, so it's been 3 days since the temp database, but in this case, we're just going to ignore that result. And so this is really the core guts of that script. And so what we need to do here is change this a little bit to make my customers happy, because for them this just really doesn't work. So what we want to do first is we want to make this an hourly script. So we're going to modify that and change it to hour. And because of that, we need to change how we're going and make it hours since backup. And so let's run that quick. And so you can see it has, well, before we were getting 0 when we were going after day, in the case of hours, it's been 21 hours since our last backup. So this gives us a little bit more granularity than we had with the other script. The other thing as well that my customer is concerned about is, in this case, it's looking at essentially all databases, including a database that might be offline. And so for them, their thought is we have other monitoring that's going and looking at, is this database online, is this database offline? So they would like it to only go and alert on, is there a backed up database for the online databases, because they may have databases that are intentionally offline and they don't want to build in a whole list of overrides. So what we need to do is go and do an add statement, and we're going to do a convert, and then varchar. And let's say 20. And to make that, let's do database property X. And we'll do d.name, comma, and let's say status. And we want that to equal online. And that looks good, and let's see if we still have all the same databases come back. Perfect. And then let's take one of these databases offline, just to make sure that that last statement is doing what we think it's doing. And so we'll right-click. I would not recommend necessarily taking one of your databases offline, but this is just a little junk database I created. So that one's now offline. We saw before, testcmdb was showing up as 21 days. We go and we run the script again, and now testcmdb is gone. So this is perfect. This is exactly what they wanted as far as changing that code. And so what we can do is we want to grab, in this case, I'm just going to grab this line because the other line I can remember, because we still need to deal a little bit with the Vbscript formatting. So it's not as easy as I'd like. So we're going to go and add in our line here. Here's this, but you can see right now we're not in happy Vbscript format, so we're going to add quote there, quote, and then a space, and then an ampersand space underscore. So that one is now fine. And here we can go and modify this to hour. And here we can go and say hours since backup. And let's go save, and we're going to build. Make sure everything is still building correctly. So technically we're building correctly, but we still haven't gone and done what we need to do to be referencing this file. So if we go back to our data source module type, you can see is script body is still here. So even though we have the separate script, we are embedding this. This would ship to all the machines. It's not actually running this one yet. It is still going and saying, my script body, as far as it's concerned, is this big mess of Vbscript and XML. So what we need to do is remove that line, create a new script body, and in this case, the format that we need to put it in include statement, which I always have to look up because I always forget. So you need a $include file content, and then we're going to go and give it our folder name, and then we have to go and give it the actual script name. So we were good enough to have just copied the existing one. Go and copy that in there. And then we need to go and end that with a $. I have spent a little more time troubleshooting than I'd like to admit because I've dropped that $. Now we want to build again and see if it's actually using our Vbscript and if we've done everything we need to successfully. Perfect. So we have a working build that is now referencing our Vbscript that we have here. Now what we need to go through is take a look at, let's go look at the unit monitor. So we can see how this is working right now. We have good and bad, two possible states that this monitor can be in. We can see it's running once a day. We can see every 300 seconds is its timeout, or that would be 5 minutes. And this right here, this threshold of 7 probably doesn't make sense anymore, because right now that's going to be 7 days is the default threshold. But now that we've gone and changed from days to hours, essentially if we leave this as it is, any database that hasn't backed up in 7 hours is going to come back as bad. So what we would probably want to do is go and change this and set this to 24. So any database that hasn't been backed up in a day, by default, is going to alert, but they now have the granularity to go and adjust this as they see fit without any issues. One of the other things that we're going to want to do is go take a look at the language packs. So there are probably a number of places in this where we are saying day. And so we really don't want to have anything with days in it because now our backup period is in hours. So we can either, I like to occasionally, if it's not too many and isn't crazy, actually go through and just update these. So I'm looking at what I'm changing, because the only thing that can occasionally bite you is if there were a case where day was actually appearing in an element ID in any way. And so I find when I do a large bulk find replace, sometimes I end up then messing up an element ID, and because I'm only doing it, we could do it throughout for the entire solution rather than just the project. But for this, let's just go through and we're going to find any of the instances of days, change it to hours. And I want to actually change that, not change my find criteria. And so you can see here, this is where the actual alert description. So it's going and right here it's grabbing these different indexes of alert properties. So if we go back, just so we can see what's going on here. If you see alert parameter 1, 2, 3, 4, those then end up corresponding back in that alert description. Alert parameter 1 is 0. You have a little bit of swapping there. So more computer programming, traditional alert parameter 1 becomes 0. 2 becomes 1, 3 becomes 2, 4 becomes 3. Why we couldn't have consistency there, I don't know. We need to ask the product group. But if we go back to language packs, so you can see 2, 1, 0, 3, which then correspond back to those. We have our nice hours there. We see here. I'm going to make this hours as well. Make that hours. And we're all set. That is the last instance of day. Save, we're going to build again. Kind of at this point you want to build fairly frequently so that if you mess something up, it's easy to go back and realize what was the thing where you fat-fingered something and missed what was going on. So right now at this point we have a new custom version of that monitor that's going to do pretty much everything my customer wanted.